I know you're out there. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
The Krisanne Hall Show.
Any varmint that crosses that lady's path has met its match. Come on!
Rise and shine, liberty-loving patriots. Welcome to the Krisanne Hall Show. Krisanne Hall here, KRISANNEHALL.com. Have you seen what's going on in Ferguson, Missouri again? I just happen, coincidentally, to be in Missouri right now as this is going down. I was here last year as it was going down too. And the interesting thing is, talking to the people on the street and the people who are here, this is, surprisingly, right, once again, outside people, not people from Ferguson, not people from Missouri, outside people causing disruption and making things worse than they need to be. Now, my friends, the Oath Keepers, have come in again. You'll remember that we did an Oath Keeper interview with Sam Andrews. He is the leader of the Oath Keepers out there in Ferguson, Missouri. He is a good man. I want to please encourage you to go listen to that interview with Sam. The episode is from March 25th, 2015. It's called Ferguson, Missouri, Truth from the Man on the Roof. And I really want to encourage you to go and listen to that interview before you draw any conclusions about the Oath Keepers and about what they're doing out there. Because they are the ones that are keeping peace, not the law enforcement. Unfortunately, they have become the non-law enforcement, non-peacekeepers. And there's nothing different now. We have Chief Belmer of the St. Louis Police Department, who is got to be just one of the biggest dictators out there. He has absolutely no concern for the law. He must be completely ignorant of our right to keep and bear arms. He's ignorant of Missouri law, and yet he wants to trump around and play bully to the people who know the law. And I want to play for you this clip, this interaction between Chief Belmer that just occurred 2 days ago. And Chief Belmer and the Oath Keepers, you'll hear Sam Andrews in the back speaking to the chief. There are a group of Oath Keepers around. They have been invited, okay? They did not just show up. They have been invited by 2 business owners to come out and protect their property from the looters. These people are not going to live through this again. They're refusing. They have allowed themselves to be disarmed, so they appreciate the fact that the Oath Keepers are there. And they have invited the Oath Keepers there to watch guard over 2 buildings so that the customers and the people working there feel safe. 2 reporters were, as the chief will say, roughed up 2 days prior to the Oath Keepers coming in. And so the business owner said, please, you helped us so much last time. I want you to come out and help us again. Now, there's some things that I want to point out about Chief Belmer's conversation with the Oath Keepers, and I want to kind of use this as a little bit of a training session for any of you who might have interaction with law enforcement who are of the bully nature like Chief Belmer. So I think what would be best is if we just listened to this audio. I want to warn you, it's not the best audio. It is taken on a cell phone. It is out in the traffic. I have done my best to remove the traffic noise, but you're going to have to listen very closely. So we're going to listen to Chief Belmer's dictate, and then I'm going to help you understand how things should go and maybe help the Oath Keepers next time with Chief Belmer and educate Chief Belmer as well. So here we go.
Hey, listen, you guys are here, obviously, and have CCWs. I don't have any problem with that. My only problem is the long guns and inciting these guys out here. I don't need a headache. I've been doing this for the last year. So I think last November we talked about CCWs are fine. What do you guys, what's your goal here?
To take these two in. Because we had a reporter feed up a couple of weeks.
I know that. You had a New York Times reporter and a Post-Dispatch reporter that was roughed up at the night. Let me ask you this, and I'm not doing this as a threat, I'm just asking.
No, we're listening.
You guys got a security license?
We don't need one.
Yeah, you actually do.
So that's all if we hire them. It's
No,
actually
it's
if
not.
we're hired.
I just
That's
got a
how
legal
ordinance
opinion on that
reads.
today.
Hey, Chief, are you familiar with 44.101?
I'm not an
Missouri
attorney.
Revised?
That's why I have attorneys, okay?
My attorney, Matt.
And I'm not arguing with you, okay?
No, we're
I'm just
listening.
telling you, I have attorneys. I didn't go to law school. So you guys may be attorneys, I don't know, okay? But I reached out to the attorney today, and I asked him about this because I needed an opinion on it. And he said, employ doesn't necessarily mean pay. It means employ like you would employ a tool or
Like a
employ
synonym for the
whatever.
word deploy.
That's exactly right, okay?
Well, would you do us a favor? Will you ask the attorney to review 44.101?
I will continue to ask him to make sure that he looks into this.
Because apparently he's missed that law.
But
That was signed
here-
into law
here's
by the
my
governor
goal,
in
okay?
2007.
I get where you guys are coming from. I get what you stand for. I agree probably with most of it, okay? And what I can't have here is any sort of a problem to where I have officers out here for several nights. I get kicked in the rear end over this deal, etc. It just causes headaches. Gentlemen, all I'm trying to do is manage this thing. You please need to understand that.
No,
Well, I'm not
understand.
going to be. I'm not trying to go down here and mess
But
with
last
people.
night that happened.
Well, no. What we did is we walked around, and that's some of the word on the street was. But if you actually look at a lot of the video, a lot of people came over. We opened up dialogue. We talked about Second Amendment. We talked
I
about
get
all
it.
kinds of
I understand.
People came up, hugged these guys, shook their hands because
We have a
they've
lot of
seen
friends
their
here. I grew up here.
I'm sure you do.
built some rapport with them.
And I grew up just north of here too. So, that's what I was before the old North on Turner's Gym up here. I mean, I get it. So, I understand where I am too. But more than anything else, this community is going to have a chance to get back to where it needs to be, as every community down here. And there is a lot of good people down there. You guys saw them last night.
Yeah.
What you're saying is true.
Yeah.
And I just want to be out there for these guys. And I certainly want to be out there for my police officers out here. So, we don't have to just continue this night after night. You guys continue to do exactly what I see you doing right now. I have zero problem. Okay? What I don't want to have to see is slung exterior weapons. So, again, we can debate all we want to.
No,
about
we
whatever
toned it
law
down
is.
tonight. We toned it down tonight,
I know you
trying
have,
to respect
and
what you had to
and I
say.
appreciate that. I really do.
But we'd like you to respect the state law. If you don't like it, have the legislators change it.
Again, I have attorneys, you have attorneys, I can deal with that later, okay?
It's an open carry state. Our attorney does. And the law, when there's an emergency declared, state law prohibits any government official from confiscating firearm or
Well, an
ammunition
emergency is
from a
not
citizen.
declared, executive order is declared. And there's a difference there, okay? So,
The Hartford County executive said on the news yesterday.
well, it's an executive order, I have a copy. But regardless, you guys are fine right now.
All right.
I just don't want anything salacious or provocative to just churn this
Certainly.
up any more than it is.
We're not here for
And that's exactly where I am, so that's why I wanted to come over and talk to you guys about it.
We
so you
appreciate
knew where
that.
I was,
You
okay?
betcha.
And I appreciate what you guys have done to service our country. You know that,
We thank you for that.
okay?
Chief,
God bless you guys.
and you.
Now, the police chief has admitted that his attorneys give opinions, and that's something that is worth taking note of, because that's absolutely true. But what we need to understand when we're dealing with law enforcement is that the police chief's attorneys are paid to give the police chief opinions favorable to the police chief's goals. That's what an advocate does. An advocate is paid to be an advocate for those that have paid him. And so we need to first understand that any opinion that the police chief's attorney is giving is always going to be skewed in favor of the police chief. That's what attorneys do. Now, the other thing that we need to recognize here is that the police chief throughout this entire discussion is, I'm not going to debate this with you. I have my attorneys, and you just need to accept what I've said. No, you don't. We need to remind law enforcement because they've become, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be condescending, I don't mean to be derogative, but this police chief has gotten too big for his own britches. And we need to kindly and respectfully remind him, officer, your word is not law. And, I don't quote the Supreme Court very often, but when they're correct, we like to reward them. And in Gregory v. Chicago in 1969, the Supreme Court reminds us that a policeman's command is not law. And I'll quote them. It says, to let a policeman's command become equivalent to a criminal statute comes dangerously near to making our government one of men rather than laws. And we need to understand that these people are not taught this. They are taught, and especially when you get to the rank of the police chief, they are taught that this is their job and you have to obey their orders. No, they don't. Especially when their orders contradict law. It's very interesting in this discussion to hear Police Chief Belmer say, I'm not here to debate this with you, but you just simply have to do as I say. No, you don't. The Supreme Court again says when the police officer is contradicting law, the law stands and you don't have to obey. There is no statute, no provision, and no law that makes you obey an unlawful command of a police officer. And this Chief Belmer is violating the law by trying to dictate to these men how to carry. And I love the way he equivocates. There's a state of emergency been called in Missouri, in Ferguson, Missouri. And yet he wants to have his cake and eat it too. We'll talk about this a little bit more when we come back from our break.
Krisanne Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist.
I love what these Oath Keepers are doing. They are preserving liberty by exercising their rights, and that's what's important. We listened in the first section to Chief Belmer trying to bully these Oath Keepers outside the law into complying with his unlawful orders. They are, yes, unlawful. Sam Andrews, our Oath Keeper friend, is trying to instruct Chief Belmer on the law and simply remind him of the law. He is unaware of the law. He says, I don't know that law. I'm not a lawyer. That's why I have lawyers. And so, again, we need to remember that the police officer's word is not law. And so if a police officer comes up to you and starts telling you things like Chief Belmer did, this is the law, you must follow the law, or this is what my attorneys say, you are well within your right to simply say, well then, I need to see what your attorneys have said in writing. I need to see that law in writing. In this technological day, you don't have to wait but 30 seconds to have any kind of law in front of you. Those guys have laptops in their vehicles. They all have smartphones. And if he's going to come and instruct people in denial of their rights, he'd better have the law accessible. If you are informed on the law and confident of the law, as I know Sam Andrews is, then I want to encourage you that you do not have to obey a police officer unless they are following the law. That is really radical, isn't it? The idea that you can disobey a police officer. If you are following the law and exercising within your rights, police officers, even according to the Supreme Court of the United States, cannot stop what you're doing. And what Police Chief Belmer is really asking for is a lawsuit. If he were to actually remove those Oath Keepers from their position, or perhaps even arrest them, Chief Belmer, I hope he hears this. Chief Belmer, you are asking for a lawsuit that you will lose. And I guarantee you that his attorney has advised him of this, or at least on some level he understands this, because you understand that Police Chief Belmer in this entire conversation is not ordering them to leave. He is asking them to cut him some slack, to which the Oath Keepers are doing. I think they are giving a lot of deference and respect to Chief Belmer. You hear one officer say, we actually toned this down tonight to respect your position because the circumstances don't need that. But you see, if those Oath Keepers wanted to sling their arms like the police chief said he does not want them to, they have the right to do so. And I love how Police Chief Belmer wants to say, they said, look, this is a state of emergency. You can't tell us. You can't take our guns from us, and you can't instruct us that we can't carry our guns. And the police chief's like, well, it's not a state of an emergency. It's an executive order. Well, you know what, Police Chief Belmer? If you believe that, then you can't have your cake and eat it too. You cannot impose your regulation by force or command if it's simply an executive order. The entire operation of the St. Louis Police Department right now is operating under extended power because of the declaration of state of emergency. And I'm looking at an article published by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Now, this is the chief newspaper in St. Louis. Just 7 hours ago, the St. Louis County Executive Steve Sanger announced late Wednesday morning that the state of emergency in Ferguson will be in effect for at least another 24 hours. Isn't that amazing? Well, another way the police chief is uninformed in the law. Now, Mr. Andrews tries to explain to the police chief the law. And I'm going to show you here, Missouri Statute, Chapter 44, Section 101, states, the state, any politician, or any person shall not prohibit or restrict the lawful possession, transfer, sale, transportation, storage, display, or use of firearms or ammunition during an emergency. And this statute overrides everything Chief Belmer says and any opinion that his attorney might have.
The Krisanne Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist.
So what do we learn from this situation? There are a few things that we need to learn from this situation. Number one, if you're going to engage in any activity that is may be publicly controversial, rule number one, and I advised this when I worked for the First Amendment law firm, rule number one, never do it alone. Make sure you have a minimum of 2 people. 3 people is better than 2. If you can't have 3, have at least 2, but I'm telling you, you've got to have 3. You've got to have somebody to man the camera. You've got to have somebody to stand and to witness, and you need to have the person who will be speaking to the officer. Because if someone's going to get arrested, you want to make sure that the person getting arrested is not the person in possession with the camera. Because law enforcement cannot take your camera from you. They cannot legally do that. If they do that, you've won. It's really a no-brainer. And so rule number 1, 3 people minimum. More than that, great. More than 1 camera, awesome. Now, rule number 2, know the law before you go. Don't get out there and start pontificating and theorizing on your thoughts of the law. You must know the law. Don't get yourself in a situation where you're creating bad circumstances for everyone else. Don't get out there and run your mouth and get arrested when you don't know what you're talking about and end up ruining it for everybody else who will know what they're talking about and try to do things right. I don't mean to be harsh, but I'm sick and tired of people running their mouths and making bad facts which make bad law. So, a minimum of 3 people, know your law. And, optimum, the best case scenario, carry that law with you in writing. Carry the Supreme Court cases. Go to my website right now, krisannehall.com. You sign up for our emails and you will get bonus material. And the bonus material is the actual handouts that I've created regarding the First, Second, and Fourth Amendments that explain the Constitution and explain the Supreme Court positions. I actually have case law quoted, and they're 1-page PDF flyers that you can carry with you. If you're going to be doing this type of thing in the situation with the Oath Keepers, you need to carry the First Amendment flyer and the Second Amendment flyers with you. And then carry multiple copies. You can provide them to the law enforcement when they are in error of the law. And as Sam Belmer did here, he also knows the state law. So know the Supreme Court opinions and know the state law as well. I would have loved to have had Sam Belmer actually had a physical copy of this law in writing. He could have handed straight to Chief Belmer and said, look, in all due respect to you and your attorney and his opinion, this is the law, and hand him the law. The third thing that was that 3 or 2? Yeah. Okay, so this is the fourth thing. So the first thing is that you have to have more than a minimum of 3 people. You must have video cameras. The second thing is that you must know the law and have it in writing. And the third thing is you must not be talked down. Demand that the police chief provide you with his attorney's opinions in writing. Was that the second one, I think? We maybe already covered that one. So I need to write this down so I know where I am. But this is important. You be within the law and you demand that the police chief show you the law. And then simply follow it. You don't have to be talked down. You simply do not have to be talked down if you know the law and you are following the law. So we need to understand our rights. We need to understand the law. Now, here's my problem. The police chief says, CCWs are good, I'm good with that, but I don't want to see this. Too bad, Chief. What you want to see and you don't want to see. The law protects what I'm doing. Now, you know my position on our right to keep and bear arms. You know that I don't believe that there is any state law or any federal law that can limit your open carry of firearms. Your right to keep and bear arms is an inalienable right associated with your right to life, liberty, and property. Government can't take those rights from you because they don't possess those rights. The only power government possesses is based upon your individual rights. And if you do not have an individual right to keep and bear arms, then they don't have a government authority to take that right. And so just by acknowledging that he wants to take that right, acknowledges that you have that right. See how that works? So, that aside, work within the law if you want to change the law. Pray about it. If God has called you to challenge that law and stand for your right, then go for it. You will be arrested. You will go to trial. In today's court day, it is not likely you will win. But if God has called you to make a public stand and use that as a platform to inform people of your rights, then I'm not going to stop you. You go ahead and do that. But you better be sure. You better be sure that God's with you on that. Because if you're not, then you're going to jail and you're going to lose a lot and you're not going to get the end results that you want. So, do this right. For everybody else's sake as well. Carry the law with you in writing. Travel in groups with multiple cameras. Require law enforcement to show you the law. Let them know, look, we are within our grounds. We are within our rights. And if you arrest us, you will be sued and you will lose. It's always good to be very respectful, but I'd like to say, look, I'm willing to be arrested because I'm confident in this. I need to ask you a question. Are you willing to be sued and lose? Are you willing to lose your job over this? Because I'm willing to go to jail for my rights. Are you so confident in what you're doing that you're willing to be sued and willing to lose your job? I think that's a conversation ender right there. It is interesting that this conversation went the way it did. The chief trying to be bully, yet being respectful. And I think above all things, that really, really informs us that, hey, guess what? He knows, the police chief knows, he is not on solid ground. So I have talked to Sam Andrews. I know that he is having his attorney contact the police chief's attorney to inform them of their rights and of the law. And I am sure that the police chief will be once again educated. I am also certain that the police chief was educated in November of last year. But it is apparent he does not care about the law, and he doesn't care about the rights of his people. The interesting thing about this is before the Oath Keepers showed up, there were people being beat up in the streets, 2 reporters. There were shots fired. There were disruptions. And since the Oath Keepers showed up, there have been 0 disturbances. There have been police presence everywhere. And the violence still continued. But the minute the Oath Keepers showed up, silence and peace. Maybe that's because of people like Police Chief Belmer running their mouths and not respecting the rights of the people. Make the people not respect the law enforcement. But they respect the Oath Keepers, because the Oath Keepers are there to protect the rights of the people. And they stand by what they believe. I think this is a lesson that our law enforcement could learn from. Stop being bullies. And start being who you're historically supposed to be. Peacekeepers who respect the law and respect the rights of the people. Understanding your primary job description is to protect the rights, the liberties, the lives, the properties of the people, not to exercise authority. Isn't it about time that we, the people, take back our communities. Establish a moral center of law that can only be recognized through mutual consent and mutual respect. Those Oath Keepers have respect because when they were there, they showed the community respect and love. They were hugging each other. They were respecting each other, and they were appreciating each other. And the people in the community endlessly thanked the Oath Keepers for doing what law enforcement refused to do. This is a little lesson that we need to learn. And I hope that you guys can benefit from this. Because remember, if you do not exercise your rights, then you don't have them. Sitting back and watching, sitting back and complaining, and sitting back and quoting the Second or First Amendments to your next door neighbor, your coworker, does nothing. Get off your tail. Get out in the streets and start exercising your rights with boldness. And when people see you do that, it is contagious. Man, I'm going to tell you what, it's infectious. And that's what this country needs. People who are willing to exercise their rights and say, I don't care about political correctness, and I don't care about bullies.
Right to tote the weapon of my choice, don't censor my voice. Hate me if you won't, or love me if you can. If the truth is what you want, then you found your man. I ain't backing down, I ain't backing up. If you think like I think, then crack it on up. I won't back up, I don't back down. I've been raised up to stand my ground. Take my job, but not my guns. Tax my check till I ain't got none, except for the good Lord up above. I answer to no one.
The Krisanne Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist.
Welcome back to the Krisanne Hall Show. I want to take this opportunity in our last segment to introduce to you my intern and my friend, Elizabeth Manley. And I'm very excited to have her. She will be with us for the next, 9 days now. Actually, it's the 13th, so the next 7 days. And so you're going to have the opportunity to hear from her more. And I'm so excited. You know, we sort of went into this as an experiment, Elizabeth, and we had this conversation in the car yesterday about how neither one of us, Elizabeth chimed up and said, what are you expecting from me? What did you expect when you had an intern? And my husband and I just sort of looked at each other and smiled out, and we had no expectations. We're just adventurous people. Obviously, you're an adventurous person, too.
Yeah, I would say so.
I mean, here you are. You have moved in with a family you've never met for 10 days, sharing hotel rooms. I mean, nothing's more close and personal than staying in a hotel room with somebody for 10 days. You have left your family, and you are trusting us to travel you around the country, and I think that's very adventurous.
Well, thank you. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed being here with you guys and getting to know you.
How old are you?
I'm 17.
And so have you been away from home before?
I have, but I think this is the longest time by myself that I've been away from home.
Have you flown by yourself before?
Yes, twice.
Oh, okay. So that's, I think the scariest part for me as a parent is having my child fly alone. And so you're obviously not a child anymore at 17, but still, mom instinct still kicks in. Was she okay with all of this?
Yeah, I think she was a little nervous at times too, but she's pretty good about letting us fly a little bit.
Well, that's good. That's good. Now, you have been with us through 2 days of training And I'm really excited the fact that you took some time yesterday to interview some of the young people who came to our Teen Eagle training for the last 2 days, and we're going to be putting that up on Facebook. I don't know when we'll get that up because we're going to be driving and teaching most of today too, but we'll hopefully have the opportunity to edit those videos and get them on Facebook and on the website so everybody can see and hear the views of our young people and our youth in liberty and the Constitution. But I want to hear from you, Elizabeth. We have just a few minutes, so tell us, what did you think, just generally, about the 2 days of training? What was the impression you walked away with as a young person experiencing that? Had you heard some of that stuff before, all of it or none of it, or what?
I had heard just a little bit in a lecture that you taught in Idaho, but I'd not heard it in its fullness like I have over the last few days. And it was very encouraging, very compelling, and I came away excited to try to make a difference in the world, and especially after talking to the Teen Eagles, that was really neat too. I think they all came away with actually a very similar opinion. They were excited to see what they could do and what the Lord could do through them, and they wanted to be people of courage, wanted to be people who could stand up and know the truth and be able to speak the truth in love.
So what was the most powerful thing you came across in the last 2 days?
That's a good question. I definitely, righteous resistance to authority, the lecture that your husband taught on that was very encouraging for me to hear, how I have biblical heroes who actually righteously resisted authority, and they're ones I can look up to. The other thing that really surprised me is that is the history behind the Constitution and the history behind the states, and that the states are actually supreme sovereign countries.
That's awesome. Those are probably the 3 most powerful things that I would agree with as well. Understanding the history of the Constitution, that it's not just something they invented. It was time-tested, blood-bought principles, that the states are countries, and that we have a biblical authority to resist. Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us, and we will absolutely have you back on over the next 10 days. God bless everybody, and see you tomorrow.